The guitar went silent. 15,000 people held their breath. Jimi Hendrix stopped playing Purple Haze, in the middle of the song, walked to the edge of the stage, and took the hand of a blind girl, and after that moment, no one who was there ever forgot that concert. Monterey Pop Festival. June 1967. The air thick with summer heat and anticipation. Jimi Hendrix was scheduled to close the second night, the slot everyone had been waiting for. Word had spread through the crowd. This guitarist from London, the one they said could make his instrument speak, was about to take the stage. 15,000 people pressed against each other on the grass. Couples sitting cross-legged. Groups passing bottles. Children on their fathers' shoulders. Everyone waiting for the same thing, to witness what they'd heard rumors about but couldn't quite believe. The stage crew finished the setup. Amplifiers stacked like monuments. Microphones adjusted. The Fender Stratocaster waiting on its stand, white with its distinctive markings, looking almost modest under the stage lights. Backstage, in the small tent that served as the green room, Jimi sat alone. Not warming up. Not running through scales. Just sitting, eyes closed, breathing. The sounds of the festival filtered through the canvas, laughter, tuning instruments, the low hum of thousands of conversations merging into one. A production assistant stuck his head through the tent flap. 5 minutes, Jimi. Jimi opened his eyes. Nodded once. The assistant left. In that quiet moment before walking into the noise, Jimi thought about why he played music. Not for the applause. Not for the recognition. Those things had come, unexpectedly, overwhelmingly. But they weren't the reason. The reason was something else. Something he'd felt the first time he'd held a guitar as a child in Seattle. The way 6 strings could say things words couldn't. The way sound could reach places and people that nothing else touched. He stood. Picked up the Stratocaster. Felt its weight, familiar as his own heartbeat. Walked toward the stage entrance. Hendrix didn't raise his voice. He never needed to. The introduction came through the speakers. The crowd erupted. Jimi walked onto the stage, and the roar became physical, a wave of sound that hit him in the chest. He didn't smile or wave. He simply moved to his position, slipped the guitar strap over his shoulder, and faced the amplifiers. The first note of Purple Haze cut through the evening air. Not loud. Not aggressive. Just present. Absolute. The kind of sound that made people stop mid-conversation and turn their heads. The crowd pressed forward. Bodies moving without thought. The music wasn't something they heard. It was something that moved through them, changing the rhythm of their breathing, the timing of their hearts. Jimi's eyes were closed. His hands moved across the fretboard with that quality that made other guitarists feel inadequate and inspired in equal measure. Not speed. Not technique, though both were there. Something else. Intention. Every note exactly where it needed to be, saying exactly what it needed to say. The song built. The crowd built with it. 15,000 people becoming one organism, breathing together, suspended in the same moment. And then, in the middle of the second verse, Jimi stopped playing. Not a pause. Not a dramatic silence before a crescendo. A full stop. The bass player looked up, confused. The drummer held his sticks mid-air. The crowd's collective momentum carried forward for exactly 2 seconds before everyone realized something had changed. Jimi lowered his guitar. Let it hang from the strap, still connected to the amplifier, but no longer making sound. He opened his eyes and looked toward the right side of the stage, toward the front section of the crowd. 15,000 people followed his gaze. There, at the very edge of the stage, stood a girl. Maybe 10 years old. Simple dress. White cane in her left hand. Her face turned upward toward the stage, toward the sound that had just disappeared. Her eyes open but unfocused in the way that meant she couldn't see what everyone else was looking at. She'd been led to the front by someone, a parent, perhaps, or a festival volunteer, and positioned at the stage edge so she could feel the music even if she couldn't see it. She'd been swaying slightly, her free hand moving in small circles, conducting an orchestra only she could hear. When the music stopped, she'd stop too, her face showing confusion, maybe disappointment. The thing she'd come to feel had vanished. Jimi walked to the edge of the stage. Not quickly. Not with showmanship. Just walked. The crowd parted slightly, creating space without thinking about it. He knelt down at the stage edge. The height brought him almost level with the girl. His knees against the wooden boards. His Stratocaster hanging against his side. "Hey," he said quietly. His voice didn't carry beyond the first few rows, but microphones caught it, sent it rippling through the speakers across the field. The girl turned her head slightly, orienting to his voice. "What's your name?" Jimi asked. "Sarah." Her voice small, uncertain. "Sarah. That's a good name." He paused. "I'm Jimi. I'm the one making the guitar sounds you were feeling." "I know." A small smile. "I can feel it in my chest." "When you play?" Jimi looked at her for a long moment. 15,000 people watching, but it might as well have been just the two of them. "Can I tell you something, Sarah?" She nodded. "Most people listen to music with their ears. But the real music, the important music, you don't hear it. You feel it. And you're feeling it better than anyone else here." Sarah's smile grew. "I stopped playing because I saw you and I wanted to ask you something." He extended his right hand down from the stage edge, palm up. "Would you hold my hand while I play the next song? I think it'll sound different if you're helping me feel it right." Subscribe and leave a comment, because the meaning of this moment is still unfolding. Sarah reached up. Her small hand found his. Jimmy's fingers closed around hers gently. The crowd was silent. Not the excited silence of anticipation. The reverent silence of witnessing something that transcended entertainment. Jimi looked back at his band. Nodded. Then looked at the crowd. "This is Sarah," he said into the microphone. "She's going to help me with this next part." He stood, still holding Sarah's hand, pulling her gently up so she was standing on the very edge of the stage platform, her feet at ground level but her hand elevated, connected to Jimmy's. He adjusted his stance, balanced his guitar with his left hand, kept his right hand in hers. And then, one-handed, he began to play. Not Purple Haze. Something else. Something slower. A melody that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than the previous songs. His left hand moved across the fretboard, creating sounds that were less like music and more like conversation. Question and answer. Statement and response. Sarah swayed again. This time her movement was different. More connected. Her hand and Jimmy's moved slightly with the rhythm, and somehow, impossibly, the music seemed to follow her movements as much as she followed the music. The people in the front rows could see what the rest of the crowd couldn't. Jimi was watching Sarah's face. When her expression changed, when she felt something shift in the music, he shifted with her. They were creating something together. Not performer and audience. Not guitar player and listener. Two people feeling the same thing at the same time, translating it into sound. The song, if it could be called a song, because it had no name and would never be played the same way again. Lasted maybe 4 minutes. It felt both endless and over too quickly. When the final note faded, Jimi didn't release Sarah's hand immediately. He knelt down again, eye level with her. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You helped me remember something." "What?" "That music isn't about being loud or fast or complicated. It's about connection. You just taught 15,000 people that lesson." He let go of her hand slowly. Sarah's mother, it was her mother who had brought her to the front, was crying. Not sad crying. The other kind. Jimi stood. The crowd erupted. Not the screaming excitement from before. Something deeper. People on their feet, applause that sounded like respect instead of entertainment. In that quiet moment, Hendrix did something no one expected. He unstrapped his guitar. Held it in both hands for a moment, looking at it like he was seeing it for the first time. Then he did something that would be talked about for decades. He handed the Stratocaster to a stage crew member and spoke quietly. The crew member nodded, carried the guitar to the back of the stage, and carefully placed it in an open case. Not the case it had come in. A different one. Empty. Waiting. Jimi walked back to center stage. Picked up a different guitar, a backup, less iconic but functional. Strapped it on. Looked at the crowd. "That guitar Sarah and I just played," he said, "isn't going to be played in public anymore. I'm retiring it. Because what we just did, that can't be repeated. And it shouldn't be." He paused, letting the words settle. Some moments are supposed to happen once. That's what makes them matter. The crowd didn't know how to respond. This wasn't how concerts worked. You didn't retire instruments mid-performance. You didn't stop playing hit songs for children in the audience. You didn't change the entire energy of a festival because one person felt something. But Jimi Hendrix had never done things the way they were supposed to be done. He launched into the next song. Different guitar. Different energy. The concert continued, and by all accounts it was extraordinary. But everyone who was there would later say the same thing. The moment he stopped, Purple Haze, and took Sarah's hand was the moment they understood what they were really watching. Not a guitar player. Not a performer. Something else. Someone who understood that technical mastery meant nothing if it didn't serve connection. After the concert, in the backstage area, a young guitarist approached Jimi. He'd been watching from the side stage, absorbing every note, every movement. "That thing you did," the young guitarist said. "Stopping the song for that girl. That was... I've never seen anything like that." Jimi was sitting on an equipment case, smoking, looking tired in the way that comes from giving everything to a performance. "It wasn't for show," Jimi said quietly. "I saw her face and I realized she was feeling the music different from everyone else. Deeper. And I thought, if she's feeling it that deeply, maybe I should stop performing and start actually playing. But you were already playing." "No." Jimi shook his head. "I was executing. There's a difference. Execution is about control. Playing is about surrender. Sarah reminded me which one matters." The young guitarist stood there, trying to absorb what he'd just heard. "The guitar I retired," Jimi continued. "I'm sending it to a music therapy program. For kids who can't see or can't hear or can't speak. Because that guitar just learned something. It learned that its job isn't to make sounds. It's to build bridges." What followed stayed with everyone in the room, long after the last note faded. The white Stratocaster Jimi played one-handed while holding Sarah's hand was never played in public again. He kept his promise. It was donated to a music therapy program in Los Angeles 6 months later, where it was used, carefully, reverently, to teach blind children that music was something they could feel with their entire bodies. Sarah grew up. Became a music teacher herself, working with special needs children. She never saw Jimi Hendrix perform again. He died 3 years later in London. But she kept something he'd given her that night at Monterey. After their moment on stage, as her mother led her away through the crowd, Jimi had pressed something small into her palm. A guitar pick. Worn smooth from use. On one side, barely visible, his initials scratched in ink. "Keep this," he'd whispered. "When you forget that you can feel things other people can't, hold this and remember. She still has it." 60 years later, in a small frame on her desk, that pick sits beside a photograph someone took that night, grainy, black and white, showing Jimi kneeling at the stage edge, hand extended down, holding the hand of a girl whose face is turned up toward a sky she cannot see. The photograph never became famous the way his burning guitar did, the way his Woodstock performance did. But the people who were there never needed a photograph to remember. They remembered the silence. The moment the music stopped and something more important began. The moment Jimi Hendrix showed 15,000 people that mastery isn't about what you can do, it's about knowing when to stop doing it. Share and subscribe. Some stories deserve to be remembered. Sarah still teaches music to blind children. She plays them recordings of that night sometimes, though the bootleg audio doesn't capture what really happened. You can hear Jimmy stop playing. You can hear him speak to her. But you can't hear the thing that mattered most. The silence that taught everyone listening that feeling is deeper than hearing. The white Stratocaster sits in a Los Angeles music therapy center, behind glass, unplayed now for decades. A small plaque beneath it reads, "Some instruments retire when they've said everything they needed to say." And in Sarah's desk drawer, wrapped in soft cloth, a guitar pick carries 2 worn initials and the memory of a hand that held hers while the whole world watched, and learned what it means to stop performing and start connecting.